Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in. Now, last week I did 3 reasons why they accuse you. And so I thought, what's a part two to that? And it actually didn't end up being a part two, it ended up being a different topic. So the topic is 3 reasons why you always give more than one chance, second chances, third chances, etc. And when I was talking about the 3 reasons why they accuse you, I specifically talked about how they will constantly put the accountability onto you. And because we are the people that we are, and we want to fix and make things better, we take on that responsibility and make it our mission to ensure that we do whatever we can to make things better. And even when we do that, those people still make mistakes, mess up, and oftentimes, if you're in a toxic relationship, it leads to more toxic behavior. Of course, they hold you accountable for it, but it leads to more toxic behavior. So then you find yourself giving them a million chances to try to change their behavior, even though you've taken that responsibility on yourself to do whatever you can to really get them to change the behavior. So as long as they have peace and they're happy with you, then you feel like their behavior will change. So why do we do that? What are the reasons why we give someone a million chances? Well, the first one is, and this is a big one, we give people a million chances because we can't fathom that someone would intentionally do the things that they're doing, because that's not what you would do, right? So we filter their behavior through our lens of intention. We say, there's no way that somebody would intentionally hurt someone that way. So if they've done this to me, then it must be insert excuse here, their childhood conditioning, a core belief, a wound that they have, etc. None of those things actually excuse toxic and abusive behavior, but we'll use it to give them another chance because we know that it's something that they could heal if they wanted to. So that's the key word, if they wanted to. So in our brains, we will justify the behavior by finding an excuse for the behavior because we can't, in our brains, make sense of the fact that somebody would do something so hurtful intentionally, knowing that it was going to hurt another person. And that should tell you something about yourself and the other person. The first thing it should tell you is that all those things that you've been trying to fix, they're pretty small mistakes, and changing them isn't going to change the relationship because you're filtering everything you're doing through a loving lens and they're filtering everything that they're doing through the lens of control. So yes, people will do the horrible things that that person has done to you if they feel like it will help them to control the situation. So no matter how many chances you give them, they might shift from that toxic behavior to another toxic behavior, but they're going to exert actions, behaviors, and thoughts that are controlling. And the reason they do this is because they don't trust the situation around them. And the reason it matters is that it doesn't. Because what they're doing is toxic regardless of the reason why they're doing it. So when you find yourself giving them a ton of excuses and reasoning, etc., you are just enabling that behavior because it is not okay for that behavior to exist regardless of what excuse exists to make that behavior true. And if they change that behavior and they shift it into another one, no amount of chances is going to change the fact that they will in fact hurt you if they feel like they need to control the situation, even if you could never fathom that in your own brain because you wouldn't do it. The second one is that you don't expect reciprocity, you give grace no matter what. So this is kind of like a segue from the first one, which is you do not expect the same grace that you're giving. So when someone says, you're doing this thing, you're doing it wrong, you need to fix it, your first move might be to do some research, to internalize it, and to actually figure out how you might mitigate the situation by fixing it. When you give them something to fix, they're going to obviously deflect and demand and do all of these other things, and you'll give them grace. You'll do the things that I said in the first one, which is find excuses and reasons for the behavior. but you don't expect that same grace for yourself. So you say, well, I'm going to give them grace and give them a chance to change that behavior. I'm going to give them grace and I'm going to understand that that could have not been their intention. I'm going to give them grace and I'm going to understand that people make mistakes. But my question to you is, who's giving you that grace? Because when you did something wrong, you were tasked with fixing the entire relationship and everything being your fault. When you did something wrong, they annihilated your character and told you that you were a horrible person. When you did something wrong, they filtered it through their lens of perception as opposed to your intention. So why are you giving the grace that you don't expect to be given back to yourself? Their behavior will change when they decide that they want that behavior to change. You giving them grace is just giving them more chances to figure out what boundaries they can push and what you're going to let them get away with. So grace is not sufficient for people whose patterns show that these are habits. If their patterns are mistakes, they won't keep repeating over and over again. If their patterns are habits, repeat 1,000,000 times. No matter how many mistakes and no matter how it shows up and no matter how much grace, they will repeat 1,000,000 times. Oftentimes it helps me to decide if I'm going to give someone grace or not, to look at the umbrella that it's under, right? So I might say something like, oh, well, this behavior was ugly, but I also understand that my 12-year-old is dealing with hormones and all of these other things. So what umbrella is it under? It's under the umbrella of behavior comes from emotion, and her emotions are heightened because of this thing. So I operate from that lens, but then I also expect that same thing back. So if I yell or lash out a little bit and I come back and apologize, I'll teach her and say, that umbrella was under I'm overwhelmed, and the behavior is showing because of my internal emotions. I will also apologize for those things, but you get the drift of what I'm saying. If you are giving someone grace, you need to figure out what umbrella it's under. If it's under the umbrella of control, manipulation, blame, shame, any of those things, those are abusive behaviors that just fall under the same umbrella. And the last reason that you give them 1,000,000 chances, and I want you to listen carefully to this one, you're accustomed to people needing several chances to give you what you don't believe you deserve. So you have a history of people in your life who've needed 1,000,000,000 chances to get it right. You have a history of people in your life who haven't been able to course correct because when you tell them that they're doing something that hurts you, they find a reason to blame you as opposed to actually understanding that their behavior has caused a negative reaction inside of you. And the reason that you continue to give them that many chances is because you honestly and truly internally do not believe that you deserve better than that. If you had the esteem to believe that someone should not treat you that way and that you were not going to accept that behavior, you might excuse it the first time, depending on what it is. But when you notice that that's a pattern and that person will not change that behavior, no matter what umbrella it falls under, you will exit that situation. If you're giving 1,000,000 chances, it's because you don't think you deserve the opposite of that behavior. And again, oftentimes that comes from a history of being treated that way and just accepting it as normal. Remember, a lot of times what we accept as normal or what we deem as home are behaviors and situations and environments that we've become comfortable with simply because they've existed in our past. And if you want to get out of doing that, write down a list of environments, spaces, people, etc. that your being aligns with, and watch what happens when you no longer allow anything that's out of alignment with that. You will not have to give 1,000,000 chances to the people who belong in your space. So, when you're thinking about why am I giving this person 1,000,000 chances, I really want you to flip back on this video and focus on those 3 things. Are you believing that your intention is attached to their action, right? So like you can't fathom that somebody would do that on purpose. They will. There are mean people in this world. Are you not expecting reciprocity? So you're not expecting back the grace that you're giving. And are you accepting these people who need all of these chances because it's what you're accustomed to and you don't think that you deserve better? I encourage you to answer those questions truly for yourself And instead of putting the spotlight on their behaviors, put the spotlight on why you keep accepting them. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carrie Nicole. Look me up on Instagram and Facebook at Carrie Nicole, and also tune in to my podcast, the Peace Podcast, that releases on Apple Podcasts and Spotify every Monday. In addition, look for my new course coming this week, August 1st, on healing from a toxic relationship and rooting yourself in the power of peace.